Discover prototypical track and turnouts with the Roadmaster series from Oak Hill Model Railroad Track Supply. Proudly made in the United States, Oak Hill's handcrafted turnouts provide unparalleled detail and accuracy, giving your layout museum-quality track work at an affordable price. Whether fully built or in easy-to-assemble kit form, Roadmaster provides all the details of real track. Looking for a custom piece of track work? Oak Hill can help with custom turnouts, diamonds, crossings, and more. Check out all of their offerings on their website, ohrtracksupply.com. From trackside to roadside and wherever you'd see a sign, Scale Signs has it all. With over 1,400 offerings in N, HO, S, and O scale, Scale Signs has the largest collection of fine scale signs on the planet. Come see the details that bring your models to life on their website, scalesigns.com. Hey, do you like free stuff? As a member of the operating crew, you'll get a chance to win awesome prizes each month. For less than a dime a day, you'll be entered to win, and just as important, your support helps keep every episode from behind a paywall and free of those unrelated and annoying commercials you hear on other podcasts. Sign up today at aroundthelayout.com/crew, and thank you for your support. ATLP Extra is our monthly newsletter delivered right to your inbox each month. Sign up for free at atlpextra.com. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Around the Layout, where model railroaders come to tell their story. My name is Ray Arnott, so glad you could join us. It's time to talk about the Nashua Valley Railroad Association's Railfair 2025 as we head into model railroad season, and nothing better to head into railroad season with than some awesome shows going on in the New England area. And joining me to talk about that from the NVRRA, we have Scott Lukas.
Hello.
And we have Tom Fitzgerald.
Hey, how are you?
Doing great, gentlemen. Glad to have you here. Glad to be able to talk about the NVRRA Railfair 2025. Nice little show you guys got up in Boxborough. Been doing it for quite a while. How long you been doing the Railfair up there, Tom?
We started doing the 2-day show probably 2018 is when we decided to do a 2-day show. Prior to that, it used to be a 1-day. So this is our 56th year that we have been doing a Railfair.
I think that's about right. Yeah.
Wow. Doing it for a long time. And you were here last year. We were talking about Railfair 2024. And now you've kind of stepped up and taken a little bit deeper leadership role. Isn't that right, Tom? Is this the arm that just springs up at the meetings? It
keeps going up, you know? So a current chairman for Railfair, Paul Stansel, he's been doing this since we started doing a 2-day show. And when we did a 1-day show, Paul's getting older and a lot more that's on his plate. So he was looking for a replacement. And the other part is his granddaughter's wedding is next year's show. So his wife mainly said, "You're not doing anything." So they had to decide on who they wanted. So I kind of said, "Hey, if you want, I'll take over." And they said, "Yeah." So after this show, I'll be officially the show chairman, taking over, moving on the 26th.
Well, congratulations to you on that. And I'm sure that the show will be in great hands, and I can't wait to talk about that. But I want to talk about your club first, because I had the great opportunity to go up there and participate in an operating session. I'm trying to think of when it was. It was at least a few months ago. It was a great shakedown session. The first time I have been to the Nashua Valley Railroad Association Club, and I was right from the beginning blown away. The minute the doors opened up, you guys have an awesome, awesome space. Scott, tell us a little bit about the clubhouse and how you guys got yourself that beautiful piece of real estate to build your layout in.
Wow. Thanks, Ray. And thank you again for having us. And thanks to everybody listening in. And we're really looking forward to having the public come down and visit the show, and obviously some of our open houses, which we'll let you know a little bit more about. Our current location up in Phoenix Park in Shirley, we've only been there since 2007. When I first joined the club, we were over in Bolton. and we had a much smaller, about a 26 by 66 layout, and it was not really double deck. It was really kind of one deck over there, and it was kind of cramped, and the aisles were only about 2.5 feet wide. And I can remember just trying to squeeze by each other. And we realized that the club was growing so much and we just couldn't stay in that space. So we formed a search committee, and I happened to be on it. And we went around to the local areas. We visited about 8 or 9 different places, and we landed on Phoenix Park, which is where some of the old ropes were made for battleships and cruise ships and whatever. And we just fell into this space. We took a tour of it, and it's quite amazing. I have some old pictures that I was looking at. And when they showed it to me, it was this big open area, and they agreed to build it to spec. And so we looked at the space. There were no walls, nothing, no electrical, nothing at all. And so we had them build us a nice little L-shaped, about 1,800 square feet. And oddly enough, they were willing to paint the walls blue for us, so we didn't have to paint the sky. So that was really a nice feature that Phoenix Park was willing to work with us on that. And that very first season, we had a little 12-foot by 4-foot oval. The guys all pitched in. We all made little modules. And that very first Christmas, we sat around and watched a couple of trains go around. And the neat thing about this club is that we held a competition, and every member was allowed to submit a floor plan. And we had about 8 or 9, I think there's about 8 or 9 different contributions, and everyone could talk about what their vision of it was. And we narrowed it down to about 3. And then finally we decided on this one, which is what you see now. But it has evolved and morphed into this beautiful 3-layered layout with an 8-foot diameter helix. So we can get to the upper deck. We have really some nice locations from around the New England area. So you can actually walk along our layout and say, hey, I've been there, or I've railfaired there. So we've got the Hoosick Tunnel, we've got the paper mill out, and we've got the water treatment plant, Reedsboro, Vermont. We've got some really nice locations, and the scenery. I think that's one of the big difference that you can say about a club like this is we pride ourselves in trying to make it look realistic. And so if you kind of put your head down right about track level and you look across the layout, it looks like you're right out there in the real world. And as the trains go rolling by, you can kind of see it. So it was really one of those things where we outgrew the space, and we looked around, and Phoenix Park people have been fantastic. It's a lovely location, and lots of free parking, which we had terrible trouble with that before. So it just everything, all the tick marks, all the boxes were checked for this new location.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's up on what I think like the second or third, is it the second or third floor of the building?
Second floor. Yep.
Second floor, but it's modernized. You have ADA compliance, the elevators and the staircases are nice. It's really to have what you guys, to have the amenities that you have is very atypical. It's a beautiful building. And again, right from the time I walked in the door, I was like, wow, I mean, you guys got an amazing opportunity there with a beautiful club. Tom, talk a little bit about the plan. Once all these plans got put into place, the layout itself, and walk us through it just a little bit and tell us what this all represents.
So part of this represents the Boston and Maine lines going in and out. So like Scott said, there's different tiers of different areas. So staging yards, we have 2 different sets of staging yards. One start is the Worcester staging, and then we also have the Portland, Maine staging. So it represents Boston and Maine, kind of central Mass, western part of the state of Mass, and it kind of goes into different parts of Vermont, Maine. I can't remember if there was another part, but it's to represent as though Boston and Maine went, instead of Guilford buying it, New England Rail bought it, and New England Rail is maintaining the tracks and everything. So the scenery there is, you like Scott said, you'd know where you are in a lot of spots. So which is nice.
No, that was the first thing that happened to me. And I always talk about signature scenes, or we talk about signature scenes a lot here on the podcast. And when I walked in, immediately it's Ardent Mills in front of me, which is the mill in Ayer, Massachusetts.
Yep.
I've been there. I've rail fanned around it. And I actually got to switch that industry out. I got to run the unloader and go around the basically the world's prototype for a 4x8 layout, right? A big loop to unload and load with. And I was like, boy, it feels like I've been here, and it feels like I'm there, and it's done so well, and it's so important to be able to have those scenes. Talk a little bit about when you guys put this plan together, the things that you definitely had to include. Obviously, the Hoosick Tunnel had to be represented on that line. That's a big thing. But talk about some of the other key scenes on that layout, Scott.
Yeah, so as you already mentioned, the mill is really quite fantastic, really good rendition of it. I think one of the important things to remember is that we try to bring as much reality as we can. Obviously, we can't make the entire paper mill. You can't do that 100%. So what we do is we try to identify key landmark portions of each building, and then we shrink it down a little bit. And then when Tom said we go across a number of state lines, we'll use scenery blocks. So you might go through a tunnel, or you might go through around a corner. And literally, as you move from one to the other, as you walk around with your trains, you're entering a whole new area. Whether you're in central Massachusetts or work your way up to Maine or down to Boston or Air, there's a little bit, you skirt a little bit into New York there. So those types of places will resonate with individuals, but there'll be other places that they could be anywhere USA. And so we'll take classic, like there's a couple of farm scenes. It could be any farm that you might see, and you might look at that and say, oh, I remember that place. And in fact, it's just one of many of the types of places that you might see when you go out rail fanning. I think one of the cool things about that is as you're walking around with your trains, you literally get that sense that you're moving from one place to the other. So you mentioned that you got a chance to run a particular train. The op sessions, we run them like the real railroad. I mean, you get a little headset. And one of the most amazing things that we wanted to build into this layout was to have dispatch. And so on different nights, a different guy is identified as being dispatch, and he'll have his headset on, and you really have to call in and say, PL 115 waiting at such and such a crossing, waiting to enter the main line. And he'll call back to you and say, you got to hold there. I've got something else coming through. Just like the real railroad. And so you wait your turn, and then it's okay to enter onto the railroad or onto the main line, and you're listening in on your headset, just like we're doing here now, almost, a little different than the podcast, but literally the same thing. You're listening in. And I think that was one of the key features. Another key feature, which I kind of alluded to in our prior one, is we wanted to have 4-foot wide aisles so that we weren't cramped, trying to get past one another as you're trying to follow your train around. Because that's one of the fun things to do, is to watch your train pull all the cars. And then you finally get to your location. You've got to cut a couple of cars out. So you get in there, you pull those cars out. Then you back up. You got to pick up some cars from there, and you got to take them to a new location. Literally just like the real railroad is operational. I think those were some of the key things that we wanted to be able to incorporate. I think the helix was something that was one of our first issues as well, because we wanted the Hoosick Tunnel, and we wanted to be able to move from Adams and get down into the other areas that you wanted to go to. And so running I think if you run, the last time I checked, if you run your train at scale speed, it can take almost 45 minutes to get all the way around the layout. Now, if you're a 10-year-old boy and you're running in a cellar, you can do it in 10 minutes. But the reality of it, if you're running like the real railroad, which is what all of us like to do, you can really spend a good 3 or 4 hours doing a couple of sessions, and you'll get to run like the last session I was in, I got to run 3 different trains, and each one took about 35 minutes to run the route, wait for dispatch, wait for permission to enter onto the main, pull back up. Sometimes you have to do these cool moves like runarounds, just like the real railroad. It's really quite remarkable that we've been able to fit together not only the cool scenic, but then real operations. Like there's a real reason for this railroad to exist. These cars need to be moved from one location to another to help these industries. And then every once in a while, we put a passenger train on just to throw everybody off, because the passenger service gets priority, and everybody's got to get off onto a siding and let the passenger train go on.
And the other thing, Ray, is is that we're not done with this layout yet.
Oh, yeah.
We already have plans to expand. So where you were when you did your op sessions, where dispatch is behind that, up against that wall, we have plans to add a branch line into there. We've been working on plans to do that. So even with that, that's going to be a whole other operations for 3-4 guys or members to go and do it. So, the planning phases, we're still doing them. It's just, when you come in, it's amazing. Every year we're doing something where we get it completed and we're doing something else. So like when you come in, you're like, wow. And then the following year, you're like, whoa, I didn't even see this. Like it was bare plywood. We have something now. So, the planning phases we're still moving forward with, and they change here and there all the time.
Well, I think that's so important for a growing club too. And it seems like you folks are a growing club. You're adding new members, and the popularity of your club, especially with the space that you have and the layout that you have, and now the operations that you have on your layout, where you don't want it complete, where a new member comes in and they don't get to experience the building part, the scenery part,
Right.
They don't get to put their signature on the layout. They don't get to find an area and be able to do some scenery or learn the processes and get the entire experience. And by adding on, you're definitely going to be able to provide that.
And so like when you went into the club, where Reedsboro, Vermont was, and then Adams, all that framing I did with Paul Stansel. We built that part over there. Gardner, when we were doing some shows, our 1-day shows, Gardner, that was done. I did some of the scenery there. We did some of the ballasting. We all got little parts in it. And I think the best part too is when people, like you said, someone coming in, they're going to have a hand in doing something on the layout, whether it be maintenance, scenery, track work, wiring. They're going to get a little knowledge on everything. And there's going to be someone there that's going to be able to help them, learn the trade a little bit better. I like to call it a trade because you're going to learn something new every time you go.
That's absolutely important. I'll tell you, the only thing I think there's a problem with your club is that it's in Shirley, Massachusetts, and not closer to Plainfield, Connecticut. And I guess you just can't pick that entire factory up and move it. So I'm going to have to take some trips up. And I was invited, like I said, a few months ago. We participated in what you folks are calling kind of a shakedown operation session, trying some new stuff. And myself and Mark Herrick and Joe Mame both all came up and got to experience operating on the layout. And it was a great experience. And at the end, we were all asked, and they said, well, what do you think? What are your thoughts? And I said, can't tell you, got to run it again. And I do that for 2 reasons. One is because I want to make sure I get a chance to run it again. I'm not going to cut my own nose off, right? I'm going to make sure I get a chance to run it again. But you really can't judge an operating session by one time. You got to run it again and run it again and run it 4, 5, 6 times. And then you can really start to get the feel, because session 1 will not be the same as session 2, as session 3, 4, 5.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So you take kind of like the averages, you take the 5, and then you say, okay, what happened over the 5 sessions, and then figure it out. Do we have a reoccurring problem, or was the issue we had in 1 didn't happen in 2 because it just didn't happen, or we gave the train to somebody else and we found it's an operator problem, not a layout problem, and all those things. But it's great that you're going through that process and being able to learn operations and be able to do that. As you folks are adding operations and adding operators, I'm sure it's really got your membership really enthused. Is that right, Scott?
Oh, absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up, because education is one of our main missions at NVRRA. We pride ourselves in being able to have experts on every little element. I think it is the greatest hobby, if you think about it. But from what Tom just said, building stuff, the construction part, if you just like to do lumber building and building the frames, if you like electrical, there's wiring, if there's scenery, there's working on the trains and, modifying locomotives, putting sound decoders in them, just that whole element. And many of our members will have a small layout at home and just the proverbial 4 foot by 8 foot. So many of our members come by and they stop and they see one of the videos at our show. And I ask them, what have you got at home? And they'll say, well, I've just got this oval thing, but I don't know what else to do with it. Those guys have been joining a club like ours or other clubs, and they learn how to do all those different things. And so they can take what they've learned by being as part of a club and then go home and maybe make it a little bit better as they're doing it. And one of the key things, I think, when we switched from the Bolton, which was where we were before, we made the decision to go completely DCC, so digital command control. And that means that you have a throttle in your hand and you have a little computer chip in each of the trains. And each of those trains has its own address. And you can control it with your controller. You can control the lights, the sound, the direction, the speed, lashing them up. And so now we're almost completely wireless. I don't think there's any wired throttles on the layout now. So you could actually sit out in the lounge and run your train from there. It's really kind of cool. And so putting a throttle in somebody's hand and seeing the look on their face when they first get to, push the button and the horn goes or the bell goes, and then they have to hit the signal to pull the train out of the staging and get ready to go. I think that's one of the things that we've heard an awful lot about all the new members that have come in, is that they get to experience the entire element of what model railroading is all about. And as Tom said, we're still expanding, and so there's plenty to do. There's always stuff to do. There's always maintenance. Every once in a while, we'll hear a bad order come across and say, well, you can't go down to this track here because we found that there's derailment going on. And literally, you have to send a repair crew out to repair the rail, just like the real railroad. And so sometimes we have to bypass a certain part of the track, again, just to try to simulate what it's like to be on a real railroad. So I think it's that realism that has grabbed and allowed our membership to explode in the last year. Nick Carboni, who's our membership chair, has just done a fantastic job of recruiting a lot of younger guys too, because that's one of the things that I think about this hobby is they try to get them away from PlayStations and Xboxes and things like that. Here you get to use your hands and do all sorts of different types of skill sets, from soldering to painting to decaling to building trees, for gosh sakes. We just built something like how many did Claude build recently, Tom? Something like 1,500 trees.
Yeah, within 6 to 8 months period.
Yeah, it's just phenomenal. And you get down and they all look like real trees. That's just what blows me away when I see how good Claude has put those trees together.
Well, it's certainly great to bring the younger folks into the club and get them involved. And like you said, get them away from the other technology. But one thing that your club has been able to do, Tom, is adapt to that new technology. Scott talked about moving over to DCC. And when I was there, a whole bunch of UWT 50 throttles, the TCS, the brand new Wi-Fi throttles were being opened. Tom, talk about keeping the club modern and how that's helped you attract younger folks.
That's one of the things we look at the club is we look at, how can we modernize, make it where it's technology for the younger people coming in. And, we take great pride in looking into how can we upgrade everything. Like Scott started, we went DCC. When I got on, we were still wiring things up. We were still doing things. Some of the electronics were starting to get older. And as we continued on, we're like, we need to update a lot of this electronics. What about going wireless? So we had to design things for the antenna to be, so it's mainly the antennas in the center of that room for the wireless. We had to add things here and there. We want to bring in younger generations. So in order to do it, we have to see what's the newest technology we have out there. And is it something where we can put it to our layout to be able to attract some of those people? That's one of the bigger things. And like you said, the throttles, the TCS ones coming out, we have, when we want to upgrade something at our business meeting, we have once a month. If the money is there, we will approve it. If we don't, we have members that will say, hey, let's say a throttle is $250. We'll have members make up half of that. if not 3/4, and then the club's only got to spend so much, a quarter of that money. So because we want to make sure that we want to make that layout accessible for everyone. That's the biggest thing.
Well, you certainly have built a great culture when members are willing to chip in and help projects move forward and invest back into a club that they don't own, but they are a member of it, and they take that ownership.
Yep. And since I've been on and Scott's been on, it's always been, we need to get this. This is, one of our boosters mainly went, and I remember Scott said, it's going to be this much. We have to send it back to NCE, but they don't have anymore. So we got to move to this. And, it's going to cost this much money. And we send it out. And as long as there's pledges and the money's there that, people put in, we got it. If we need to pay for tables for a show or, repairs to the club quarters, the club only has so much money. Within that, they have a budget. So within the budget, if it's something that we can't do, the membership will kind of be like, what are we going to do? And the board will say, hey, is there anyone, if we send this out, would anyone be willing to help pay for it? And I'll tell you right now, Ray, there could be 10 of us there, and all 10 of us will be like, yeah, we'll put $20 in, $30 in. I'll pay for, we'll have one member say, I'll pay $100, up front. Here it is, because we enjoy the hobby, we enjoy the club, and, we want to keep it going. That's the biggest.
Well, one thing I was able to do, obviously, be able to see the club through an operating session, but that's not the only way that folks can go up and check out the club as well. Talk about the open houses, Scott.
Yeah, we have a couple open houses a year. We just had one a little while ago. We advertise and we put them around, and that's where we let the public just come on up anytime. So we'll usually go from 10 to 4 on a Saturday, and we've got nice signs, our classic Kelly green with gold signs plastered around Shirley, directing people to the layout so they can come up. We'll oftentimes put a throttle. We'll set off a section so that kids or young adults or even old adults who want to put a throttle in their hand and try their hand at moving the locomotives around just to get a feel for what it's like. So we do open houses. We have oftentimes had people who are interested. For example, at Railfair, we'll have people come up and say, I really am interested in joining the club, or I'd like to see it. So we'll schedule a private meeting for them. So we have scheduled open houses, about 2 to 3 a year, plus by appointment. If somebody's really genuinely interested, I've done that a couple of times, where after a big show, sometimes after Springfield. In fact, I think that's how I got Paul Stanzel in. I think I recruited him from the Springfield show. I remember just meeting him there at the club and then just giving him individual tours. And I know Nick has been giving individual tours on Saturday afternoons for members or potential members, and they get a chance to see it, up close and personal. And I'm glad you brought up the technology part, because I forgot to mention we have an app for that. Some of the young kids, there are apps that allow you to run your train. And now that we've gone to the TCS system, the wireless system, it supports wireless phone apps. So you don't even need to buy a throttle. You can actually use your phone and throttle up, throttle down, push a couple of buttons, change the direction. You can sound the horn. You can't do a lot of programming with it, but that doesn't really matter. You still get a chance to see how that technology is moving along with the younger generation and bringing them into it. So yeah, there's a lot of different ways, not just Railfair, but open houses and also private tours.
And the other part too, Ray, is so like Boston and Maine Historical Society, they will have a meeting up at our layout or at our club quarters. And it will be an open house for all Boston and Maine historical members. And they will come up and, they won't make it the Railfair or any of our open houses, but they have this meeting. They call us and say, hey, we want to have a meeting there. They come up, they hang out, and, we keep the doors open for however long they need us to. And a lot of their members come up, they're like, I haven't seen it in 2 years, 3 years. You guys have been doing a great job. It's that sort of thing too that we work with.
Ain't that awesome? That whole idea of being able to use a club layout to tell a history lesson and then get the stamp of approval from the Historical Society on top of that.
Yeah.
That must be a huge honor for
it's
you
really
guys to be
rewarding.
able to have that.
It's super rewarding because those guys know everything about it, and they just know stuff that every time we have them over there, I just learn something new about it. And they say, "Oh, well, it didn't used to go that way. There's another track that went over this way," and these guys just know it like the back of their hand. It's really cool to learn some new nostalgic every time they show up.
Yeah, what an amazing opportunity. So imagine you can find out about your open houses and all those other events, same website, NVRRA.com. And I'm sure on there is your schedule for all these open houses. Am I right?
That's right. We have a calendar up there. Yep.
Yep. They can also check us out on Facebook, NVRRA as a Facebook, and we have a YouTube account, which we have videos showing some locomotives running, operation sessions. You can even get like a cab ride throughout the layout also. So, and then on the YouTube channel, it is NVRRA.
Excellent. We'll share all those links on our website, aroundthelayout.com/178. So, Tom, it's time to talk about Railfair 2025 and this event that now you get to be in charge of. You have your hands on the throttle, and tell us about Railfair 2025 and what one can expect by attending this event up in Boxborough.
So when you come up, yeah, I know, right? Just take the throttle and start running it. But when you come up to Railfair, you'll find there's going to be a lot of vendors that we have. We sold 104 tables this year. We have about approximately 5 layouts right now. So you're going to have a lot of vendors that you're going to be able to see, all different scales, all different items that are being sold, new, used items. So there's going to be a lot of that, and you'll see. I believe one of them is going to be a clinic. Someone's going to be doing small little items here and there, so that as people walk by, they can ask questions. They'll be able to answer it. You'll also have some people that are customizing. Kevin Gallagher for Hopedale Shops, he's going to be there. A good friend of mine. So he's going to be there, and he makes a lot of great stuff. One of the locomotives, he did one for me, so it's actually up here on the display case, but it does run my layout. So you'll have North Shore Model Club there. They'll be selling some stuff. We'll have Amherst there with their layout. Hub Division will be there with their layout. T-Track will be there with their layout. Thomas the Tank Engine layout will be there. ETE will be there with some selling tables. They'll have their layout there. Chippewa Railroad Company will be there. Boston and Maine Historical is going to be there. So there's going to be a very vast majority of different things that you'll see there.
So buying, selling, seeing, doing, there's just a whole bunch of things that you could do at Railfair 2025. And I also know there's another thing that's very special about Railfair 2025 that makes it a big family event, and that is the Kids Caboose Corner. In that it's a separate room, right, for more tuned towards the kids. Tell us a little bit about that, Scott.
Yeah, that's something that we came up with a couple of years ago, where we try to identify layouts that are lower to the ground. So you'll see the New England T-Track that Fei Chin does a fantastic job of putting these layouts down nice and low. It's an end scale layout, and he really gets down with the kids. They get a chance to see it up close and personal. As Tom mentioned, we've got Thomas the Tank, and then the European train enthusiasts. They also will have a small layout that the kids can operate. So there'll be a little throttle there. So any little kid, as long as they're accompanied by an adult, can actually operate that layout. In the past, we've had some vendors who specialize in toy trains or books and smaller Brillo type trains that they'll sell. That we don't have somebody like that this year. We were hoping to get Lego. Unfortunately, our schedules didn't match with them, but maybe we'll get them next year to come out. But yeah, it's really geared towards allowing kids, very young kids, to be able to see what the hobby is all about, and really quite enjoyable for them to be able to put their hand on a little throttle there and operate something at their kid level. All these layouts are down nice and low for them so they can see it.
Excellent stuff. So an event to bring the entire family to. Thomas, why don't you tell us all about what we need to know for attending Railfair 2025?
October 4th and 5th, they're going to be from 10 to 4. Ticket prices adults are going to be $10. kids will be 5, 12 and under are going to be free. And then if there is any kids that are wearing Scout uniforms, part of the Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts, they will come in for free also. And usually what we do also is we collect a lot of old magazines, Model Railroad Craftsman, Model Railroader, Trains, magazines. And if the kids come in, we actually give them an old magazine to try to spark the interest into the trains too. There will also be food available. So when you come through, there will be like a little calf. I call it a little calf, but there'll be the hotel will be selling some food, usually pizza, chicken nuggets, fries, nachos, drinks, you name it, they probably have it. And then you'll have our main area where the dealers, some of the layouts will be. And then also when you come in, the kid caboose area will be right there in the corner. So there's a lot of activity that will be done over there. There'll be available ATM around just down the hallway. Bathrooms are available. So it's pretty well set up to make it, a good experience.
Let me just make sure there's not a typo here on this flyer I'm looking at. 2-day admission, $10 a person.
Yep.
Do I have that right?
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
Awesome. Where in the heck are you going to ever entertain yourself for 2 days for $10?
As long as you have that wristband and you come back, you go Saturday, you want to come back, you come back with that wristband, you get in. That's all it is.
Awesome. Awesome stuff. Great way to spend a weekend, October 4th and 5th. Get up at the Boxborough Regency Hotel. That's 242 Adams Place, Boxborough, Massachusetts. You won't have to remember that because you can go to their website, NVRRA.com. And of course, you can go to our website as well. Catch all the links that we talked about on this show, aroundthelayout.com/178. Scott and Tom, it was great to talk to you about everything going on up at the Nashua Valley Railroad Association and that awesome club you got up there and all the awesome events, including Railfair 2025 that you guys are putting on. And I look forward to seeing you in Boxborough in October.
Thank you, Ray. And we're looking forward to having you back for another op session. And you have to get that train out. You try another train and you'll get a whole new experience. But thank you again for having us.
Yeah, no, thank you, Ray, for having us on. For any of the viewers, we hope to see you there. If you have anything, you see Scott or myself, come and talk with us. If you want to visit the layout, feel free to send us a message through our email link, and one of us will get back to you. So, but we want to thank you, Ray, for having us on.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Around the Layout. Learn more about today's episode, check out past shows, and much more on our website, aroundthelayout.com. Show your support by becoming an operating crew member at aroundthelayout.com/crew. Follow us on social media, aroundthelayout.com/social. And send us your feedback, aroundthelayout@gmail.com. Thanks for hanging out with us around the layout.